If your own family announced, over ribs and sweet tea, that they were moving into your home, would you hand over the keys? Would you smile, swallow, and say, "Sure, make yourselves comfortable"? Or would your fork stop midair the way mine did, sauce dripping back onto the plate like a clock melting in slow motion? You don't plan for moments like this. You just feel your stomach drop, your ears ring, and the world tilt a few degrees off center. That was me on a hot Austin Sunday, the air thick with mesquite smoke and cicadas, when my brother Noah and his wife Jenna looked across the picnic table and said, calm as a weather report, "We're moving into your duplex." I heard the sentence, but my brain wouldn't accept the words. My duplex, not a spare couch, not a guest room. My duplex, the place I worked a decade to afford, the place that pays its own mortgage because I planned it that way, the place I can finally exhale inside. You've had a moment like this, right? When someone reaches for something you built as if it belongs to them. You want to laugh, because surely you misheard. You want to cry, because you didn't. The backyard looked like a summer postcard. String lights, mismatched lawn chairs, my dad in his king of the grill apron, fat slices of brisket bleeding onto butcher paper. Mom kept refilling everyone's iced tea. Kids chased each other around the crepe myrtle. Jenna had that hostess smile on, a perfect curve that never touched her eyes. Noah leaned back like a man delivering good news. "It solves everything," he added, nodding toward me. "Timing's perfect with your tenant leaving. We'll take the bigger unit. You can switch to the small one. Or, try one of those apartments by your office, short commute. If you were me, what would you say first? No. Absolutely not. Have you lost your mind?" I wish I could tell you I said any of those right away. I didn't. I stared at the condensation sliding down my glass and counted the grooves in the picnic table, the same table Dad built when Noah and I were kids. Splinter smooth now from 1,000 meals. How do you make sense of someone reaching across that history and unhooking your life? Mom touched my wrist. "Honey," she said, warm and gentle, "this is what family's for. You've done so well. You can help them get back on their feet." She didn't whisper, but it felt like she did. Like the whole yard dimmed and that one sentence grew neon. You've done so well. You can help. It's amazing how praise can feel like pressure wrapped in a compliment. Jenna slid her phone across the table. Photos of mood boards, paint swatches and cheerful names. Cloud, whisper, soft dawn. A mock-up of my living room with a wall knocked out to open the space for the twins. Stainless appliances I didn't order. A craft nook that used to be my office. "I've already talked to a contractor," she said brightly. "He can start next week. If we split the cost, it'll be nothing. And with what you make," she shrugged, "you won't even notice." Do you feel the heat rise in your neck when someone tells you what you can easily afford? I felt it. I felt the years of weekends I worked instead of going to the lake. The lunch hours I skipped to run numbers. The last-minute software releases, the postmortems, the promotions I earned one nervous presentation at a time. I felt the moment the mortgage was approved and I sat in my car and cried, forehead on the steering wheel, because I did it. The duplex wasn't luck. It was strategy and grit and spreadsheets with too many tabs. Noah chewed and nodded like this was already decided. "We'll help with the mortgage," he added, vague as fog. "Once things stabilize, you know how it is." He said help, the way people say, "I'll get you back sometime." You've heard that tone. It's a promise that floats, never lands. Dad flipped a rack of ribs and looked over the smoke. "Makes sense to me," he said. "Family first. You're one person in a place that sleeps 4. He meant it kindly. He usually does. But kindness with numbers behind it is still math, and math doesn't lie. One person doesn't erase ownership. 4 people don't create a claim. Wait. My voice sounded farther away than it was. You're moving into my place? I needed to hear the sentence out loud. Plain, Jenna blinked. Our family needs space, she said. Patient the way you are with a child. Your tenant's leaving. The bigger unit has better light. The twins need separate rooms, and you work late. You'll barely be home. A list. Polished, practiced. She'd rehearsed this, maybe in the car, maybe all week. You're probably wondering, why not get up and go? Why not end it right there? Part of you wants to be polite. Part of you thinks, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should give them a month. Maybe I should give them a chance. That's the trap. It starts with maybe. I set the phone back on the table. No, I said, finally, the smallest word in the English language doing the heaviest lift. I said it softly, because I didn't trust my voice not to shake if I tried louder. No, you're not. Silence pulled tight across the tablecloth. A fly landed, changed its mind, lifted off again. Far down the block, someone revved a motorcycle. My mom smiled in a way that begged me to be reasonable. Sweetheart, she said, don't make this hard. I wanted to ask, hard for who? I wanted to say, would you hand me your house if I asked nicely and brought a Pinterest board? Instead, I took a breath and explained, because that's what I do. I need the rental income, I said. It's part of the plan. I bought that duplex with numbers that only work if both units pull their weight, and I live there. That's my home. Noah raised his hands. We're not asking for forever, he said quickly. 3 years, maybe 5. He grinned like 5 years is a weekend. And we'll pitch in. Once my hours are back. The twins shrieked at the hose and he smiled toward them like a campaign ad. Family values, sunny day, future bright. Jenna's voice stayed smooth. Think about the message it sends, she said. We show up for each other. We don't let family drown. She didn't say I was letting them drown if I said no. She didn't have to. Have you noticed how a crowd can change the temperature of a room? It wasn't a vote, but it felt like one. Nods around the table, a cousin murmuring, that's what sisters are for. An aunt pursing her lips in that disapproving way that's more statement than sentence. When enough heads tilt the same direction, you start to wonder if your spine is the problem. Rachel, Dad said, using the tone that used to put a stop to teenage arguments. No one's taking anything from you. We're asking you to share. Temporary. Be generous. There it was. The word generous, used like a yardstick. Measure up or be the selfish one. You can feel your story tightening around that label, can't you? The wrong kind of woman. The career girl with too much square footage and a cold heart. The one who won't share. I looked at Noah. He didn't look back. He buttered a roll with concentration. Jenna's phone screen glowed beside my plate, my living room erased by her drawing. Walls gone, rooms renamed. A life redrafted with a fingertip. If you were me, I asked, this is the part where I look straight at you. Yes, you. Would you give up your home? Would you give up your plan? Would you pay to renovate a place you might not step foot in so someone else can live there free? Answer me, even if it's just inside your head, because your answer says who you are when the table turns, when the lights are pretty and the pressure is heavy and everyone calls it love. I didn't flip the table. I didn't storm out. I wish drama worked like that. Real life is slower, stickier. I stood up to refill my tea so I could borrow 20 seconds to breathe. The cooler lid thumped. Ice cracked. The air outside the circle of family sounded alive. Distant laughter, a dog barking, a plane dragging a white line across the blue. I thought about every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. I thought about how small you make yourself to fit inside other people's expectations. I thought about keys. How they feel in your palm, how they mean freedom until someone else tries to hold them. When I sat down, I found my voice had sharpened itself. I'm happy to help, I said. I'll help you look for something you can afford. I'll help with applications. I'll help you run a budget, but I'm not moving, and you're not moving into my duplex. Mom's smile wavered. Dad frowned like a judge about to sentence the stubborn. Noah flushed. Jenna's lashes fluttered, a blink longer than natural, a reset. Then she tilted her head. "We already gave notice," she said. "End of the month." She said it lightly, almost playful, as if she'd handed me a riddle with only one answer. There it was, the second hook buried under the first, not a request, a fait accompli, a trap with the door already shut. If you wanted proof this wasn't a favor but a takeover, this was it. They'd made plans in my silence. They'd counted on it. "Then you need to call your landlord," I said. "Today." The twins barreled past the table, dripping water, squealing. One bumped my chair. I held it steady. Jenna's smile thinned. "Family doesn't let family be homeless," she said. "Family doesn't make family homeless either," I answered. The words surprised me with how steady they sounded. Inside, my heart beat like a hummingbird trapped behind glass. Dad set down the tongs. "Enough," he said. The final word voice. "We'll talk about it properly later. Don't ruin a nice afternoon." The command slid across the yard and pinned me in place, the way it used to when curfews were broken and report cards were late. But I'm not 16, I'm 37. I pay a Texas property tax bill that could make you gasp. I know the price of drywall per sheet and how many weekends it takes to refinish floors when your arms ache. I know that if you hand someone your boundary once, they'll mark it as common ground and build over it. I put my napkin on the table, neat. "We are talking about it," I said, "right now, because my answer won't change later." I met Jenna's gaze. No. I met Noah's. No. I looked at my parents, the people who taught me the value of work and, apparently, the art of ignoring it when it's inconvenient. No. You can hear a backyard shrink. The kids' laughter moved farther away. A bee investigated the rim of a can of Dr. Pepper. The sun slid behind a cloud, and for a second the heat eased, like the day exhaled with me. Jenna picked up her phone, smoothed her dress, stood. "We'll revisit," she said lightly, as if this were a calendar invite. "When you've calmed down, I wasn't loud, I wasn't cruel, I just nodded once." "You can revisit all you want," I said. "My answer will still be no. Maybe that sounds cold to you. Maybe you think I should have offered a timeline, a trial, a compromise that would slowly expand until it swallowed my life. But if you've ever been here, you know the only word that holds is the shortest word you own. I don't know who first changed the subject. Dad said something about the Cowboys' preseason. Mom passed more corn. The world pretended to continue. But under the small talk, a new map was drawing itself, lines, borders, places you can't cross without permission. On the drive home, the sky blazed pink over Mopac, and I rolled the windows down to let the heat out of my chest. Maybe you'd feel guilty after a scene like that. I did. I felt guilty and proud, in equal measure, which is a strange cocktail to drink while merging into traffic. But here's what I want you to hear if you're still with me. You are allowed to keep what you built. You are allowed to say no, even when people you love call it selfish, especially then. If you were sitting across from me right now, if this wasn't a screen but a table, I'd hand you a napkin and ask, what would you have done at that barbecue? Would you have slid over the keys? Or would you have held on? Tell me, because your answer matters more than you think. And if you've ever stood your ground and paid the price, I want to hear that story too. The Monday after that barbecue felt louder than usual. The office AC rattled. Keyboards clicked like rain. Even the elevator ding got under my skin. Maybe you know that feeling when every sound is a nudge and every nudge pushes you back toward a conversation you didn't want to have. My phone started before coffee. "We need to talk about yesterday. Mom, no good morning, no how are you?" I put her on speaker because my hands were shaking and I didn't trust the phone not to slip. She sighed the way only a mother can. "You were sharp," she said. "Noah took it hard." Jenna took it harder. We're family, Rachel. You don't slam doors on family. I looked at the spreadsheet on my monitor, numbers blurring. I didn't slam anything, I said. I said no. A pause. A small, wounded inhale. That's the same thing, is it? You tell me. Is a boundary a slam door? Or is it the only way you keep the wind out when the season changes? The texts came next. A cousin with a prayer hands emoji. Heard y'all had drama? Don't be stubborn. God blesses a generous heart. An aunt I haven't seen since Christmas. Your brother's kids need stability. You can always get another place. A college friend who still follows Jenna on Instagram. Girl, what happened? She posted something about selfish relatives. Was that you? Was that me? I typed, deleted, typed, deleted. You ever write a paragraph in your head and then delete it because it would only feed a fire? I did that 5 times before I put my phone face down and breathed through my nose for a full 10 seconds, like a yoga app was watching. By lunch, the group chat had turned into a courtroom. People who hadn't earned a seat in my life were suddenly on the jury. Just for a year, you're single. They're drowning. You won't even notice the cost. That was my favorite. You won't notice. As if numbers stop counting when you stop looking, I ate at my desk. Half a turkey sandwich, a bottle of water warm from the break room fridge. My coworker Kevin rolled his chair over. You look like your email crashed, he said, light, friendly. Worse, I said. My family is trying to reboot my life, he whistled. That bad? Worse than you think. He nodded the way people do when they want to help but don't know how. You want me to block your notifications? Tech can solve some things. I wish, I said, and we both smiled, because it's easier to laugh than to say, I'm scared they'll take something and I'll let them. Do you ever feel alone in a room full of people who like you? That was me all afternoon. I answered emails. I ran code reviews. I made small talk about weekend plans I didn't have. And under it all, the hum. You're selfish. You're cold. You're the wrong kind of woman with the wrong kind of priorities. On the drive home, the traffic on Mopac stacked like dominoes, brake lights, heat shimmering off the asphalt. I left the radio off. The silence was a mirror. I caught my face in it, tired, tight around the mouth, not angry, just bracing, like I was walking into a wind that wouldn't quit. The voicemail light blinked when I unlocked my door. First message, Dad, measured and official. We're overreacting, he said, which always means he thinks I am. Come by Wednesday, we'll make a plan. Not we'll talk, we'll make a plan. His voice is a meeting invite in human form. Second message, Jenna, bright as a bell. No hard feelings, she said. We'll figure this out. The contractor has a window next week if we want to lock it in. Let me know about the deposit. Let me know about my money for her plan. Third message, Noah, short. Love you, he said, then hung up. It should have helped. It made my throat ache. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall I'd painted myself 3 summers ago. A soft gray that took 4 coats because the drywall drank every ounce of color like a thirsty thing. I could still see, if I tilted my head, the place I'd missed behind the thermostat and had to touch up with a cheap brush at midnight. You remember your sweat. You remember the little humiliations, the drip on the floor, the nick in the baseboard, and they turn into pride. Because you fixed them. Because you learned how. Pattern interrupt. Come with me for a second. Not to the barbecue. Not to the living room with the blinking voicemail light. Come back farther. It's 2 a.m. 5 years ago, and I'm hunched over my laptop at the kitchen counter in a rental that smelled like someone else's dinners. There's a Walmart fan pushing warm air around. I'm building a spreadsheet so nerdy it should wear glasses. Columns for down payment targets, interest rate scenarios, maintenance reserves, vacancy assumptions, appreciation ranges. I've got a second tab for side gigs and a third for things I'm not allowed to buy until I own property. That list was long. Vacation, new couch, any shoes I lusted after on Instagram, the fancy blender influencers swear will change your life. On Saturday mornings, I drove out to open houses I knew I couldn't afford yet just to train my eyes. Which neighborhoods flood, which roofs sag, which listings smell like cookies because something else is wrong. I ran my fingers along window frames and felt for softness. I asked awkward questions until realtors stopped talking to me. I learned to calibrate the ache between I want and I can. I took a second job doing books for a friend's cafe. I worked Sunday afternoons for a nonprofit, cleaning up donor databases. I said no to trips that would have crowded my feed with beat shots and crowded my credit card with regret. I told my friends I couldn't go out because I had an early morning, and it was true in the sense that I had to get up and have discipline. You know how people say, it'll be worth it? They don't tell you the part where you only believe that after you've done it. The day the bank said yes, I sat in my car and laughed in a way that sounded like crying. The day I got the keys, I pressed them into my palm hard enough to leave dents. The first night, I slept on the floor, on a camping pad, because the bed frame took 4 hours and 3 YouTube videos. The first week, I learned the language of home ownership. Shut-off valves, GFCI, P-trap, escrow. The first month, I made a stupid mistake with a contractor and overpaid for a fix that took 10 minutes, and I promised myself I would never pay for 10-minute fixes again without understanding them. Back to my couch, back to the gray wall, back to the blinking light. If you felt me earn it, maybe you understand why my chest tightened at the phrase, "You won't even notice." I scrolled past Jenna's post. A photo of her coffee cup and a caption about some people caring more about square footage than family. 200 likes. 3 dozen comments in soft tones. Stay strong. God sees your heart. Something about wolves. Not one of them knew the square footage had names like mortgage and insurance and repairs, and those names have teeth. Not one of them knew that the market doesn't accept love as a form of payment. I wanted to clap back, to pull receipts, to post my spreadsheet and tag it #FamilyMath. Instead, I set the phone down and stood in my silent, honest little home and counted the reasons I said no. 1, I like sleeping without strangers' plans in my room. 2, I like paying my bills on time and knowing I can keep doing that. 3, I like a door that locks with a key I earned. 4, I like myself better when I don't break promises I made to me. The next morning, Mom texted a scripture and then a dagger wrapped in silk. "A generous woman prospers," she wrote, "and those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed." Then, "Dinner Thursday? We'll all be there." We'll all be there. You know that code. It doesn't mean lasagna. It means ambush with silverware. I typed back, "I'm working late. True or not, it bought me a day." She sent a thumbs up that felt like a frown. Work didn't save me. The group chat did what group chats do, filled the silence with opinions shaped like bricks. My phone lit up every 15 minutes like a telltale heart. An old neighbor chimed in. "We raised our kids in a duplex. It builds character." A coworker's spouse I'd never met DM'd me. "Think of the twins, as if I don't. As if love means cutting the ladder I'm standing on and hoping I don't fall." Midweek, Noah showed up at my place without warning. He held a 6-pack like a peace offering. He shifted from foot to foot and didn't look me in the eye. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. Of course I did. He's my brother. He opened a beer he didn't drink and put it on a coaster like that would impress me into agreement. "I didn't want it to go like that," he said. "Like what?" "Like you saying no." He tried a smile. It looked like a sticker that wouldn't stick. "Jenna overstepped, I get it. But you know we're in a bind." "You're always in a bind," I said, not unkindly, just honest. "What's the plan this time?" His shoulders lifted, fell. Just for a few years. Then we'll figure it out. A few years, the softest lie. The one that robs the bank slowly. We can't afford our place anymore, he said. They raised the rent, my hours got cut, the twins need... I know what the twins need, I said. They need parents who can count. It came out sharper than I wanted. He winced. I regretted it and didn't. He picked up the beer and put it down. So that's it? That's it. Mom thinks you're being stubborn. Mom raised me to be... He laughed then, quick and surprised. It eased something. She did, he said. He rubbed his jaw. You know she's planning a family meeting, I said. The phrase settled in the room like a heavy coat. Family meeting. The two most exhausting words in the language. No surprises this time, I added. If we're going to talk, we talk. No ambushes. He nodded. I'll make sure. He won't. He can't. But it was good to hear. After he left, the apartment felt bigger and lonelier. It's strange how holding your line can make you feel like you're the one exiled. I washed the untouched beer down the sink and stood there watching the foam collapse. I thought about generosity. I thought about what it means to give without being taken. Where's the line? Do you know yours? You might be thinking, Rachel, why not help a little? Why not bend, not break? Here's why. People don't read your generosity as the end of the sentence. They read it as the beginning of a new paragraph where your name doesn't appear. If you've learned that the hard way, tell me, seriously, drop a line. Your comment might be the lifeline someone needs while their phone lights up with opinions that don't pay their mortgage. By Friday, the noise had built into a weather system. Storm fronts of guilt, gusts of advice, a forecast of, we'll be there at 6. I cooked pasta for one and ate standing at the counter, fork in one hand, phone face down under a dish towel like it was a small animal that needed to calm. The house ticked the way old houses do when they cool, and the sound soothed me. Real things settle, they don't demand, they don't broadcast, they just are. I washed my plate, I checked my locks, I turned off lights. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling fan chasing shadows around the room. Tomorrow would be louder. Tomorrow would be company and chairs pulled close and 1,000 words for yes wearing different suits. I tried to sleep. I tried to practice how to say no without shaking. I tried to remember the smell of fresh paint and the ache of earned things. I did what you do when pressure stacks, piece on piece. I reminded myself who built this life. And I promised that woman I wouldn't step aside and let someone else live in it. If you've been here, if your boundary turned you into the villain in someone else's story, tell me what helped you hold it. I'm listening. Someone else reading is, too. They called it a family conversation, but the location gave it away. Not anyone's living room. Not a restaurant where you can end a fight by asking for the check. They picked the fellowship hall of our church, the big room off the sanctuary with the beige carpet and the folding chairs, and the smell of coffee that's been reheated too many times. Neutral ground, they said. You know what neutral ground means when the other team brings a podium. I got there early on purpose. I don't like walking into rooms where people are already seated and have decided the ending without me. The fluorescent lights hummed, the thermostat clicked. Sun cut through the high windows and made rectangles on the floor, bright enough to make the dust look like slow glitter. A folding table waited in the middle with a stack of paper cups and a pitcher of water sweating onto a doily someone crocheted in 1998. I took a seat that faced the door. If you've ever sat with your back to a room that wants something from you, you know why. Mom and Dad arrived first, carrying hospitality like armor. Mom set out napkins that said BLESSED in a looping font. Dad straightened chairs into a neat horseshoe, like he was drawing lines on a whiteboard only he could see. He kissed my cheek. Thank you for coming, Rachel, he said, formal, the way he gets when he's already chosen the reasonable position and wants me to stand in it. I said yes to a conversation, I answered. Not to a plan. He smiled like I was cute for thinking those were different. Noah and Jenna walked in with a manila folder so thick it could have been a college application. Jenna wore a navy blazer, which was hilarious and not. Her smile looked practiced. Noah looked tired in a way that felt like a choice. They didn't sit. They set things down, pages, a tablet, a tape measure. I am not kidding. A tape measure, like we were about to verify square footage for the benefit of their argument. Aunt Linda and Uncle Ray came too, which I hadn't expected. They settled themselves with the kind of sighs that say we have lived through everything and we're prepared to live through you. I glanced at Mom. She met my eyes and then didn't. Reinforcements. Let's begin, Dad said, and I had to stop myself from asking if he'd printed an agenda. He nodded at Jenna. You can present first. Present, that was the word. I almost laughed. The fellowship hall flickered into a boardroom. The folding table became a conference table, the paper cups sparkling water and branded pens. Jenna slid her tablet into a stand and tapped the screen. Up popped a floor plan with little icons and arrows and a title in a tasteful font. Proposed renovation, Rachel's Duplex. She said the possessive like a joke, like a word that could be edited. Thanks, everyone, for making time, Jenna said, her voice smooth, like she'd practiced in the mirror. I know change is hard, but we've put a lot of thought into how to make this transition best for everyone. She looked directly at me. For you too, Rachel. For me too, I repeated, because sometimes the only defense is the echo that shows how absurd a sentence really is. She launched into it. First, the twins need separate rooms. That's non-negotiable. She touched the screen. The second bedroom in my unit morphed into 2 tiny rectangles, a partition wall drawn in dotted lines. We'll remove this closet, open up this wall for light, and... Stop, I said before I decided not to. You're drawing over the office I built. I could still feel the weight of the desk I dragged in there. The blister from the screwdriver I used because I refused to pay $40 for a drill bit I'd only use once. The shelves that leaned until I shimmed them with folded magazine pages, and then painted the edges so the hack disappeared. Jenna smiled, patient. We would improve it, she said. And we've consulted a contractor. She tapped again. Budget lines appeared at the side like a menu, cabinets, flooring. We can keep it under $30,000 if we choose mid-grade finishes. We, under 30. The words clicked like teeth. Noah cleared his throat. I know it sounds like a lot, he said, but we'd split it. He held up his hands. 50-50. 50-50, I repeated, on renovations I don't want. For a life I didn't choose. Please let her finish, Dad said, and my name tucked itself into his tone even when he didn't say it. Jenna kept going. Kitchen needs a refresh, she said. We'd knock out this half wall to make space for an island. Easy fix, and it will raise property value. She said property value like she'd just taught me a vocabulary word. On the table in front of me, Mom placed a folder with my name written in her careful handwriting, Rachel. I opened it. Inside, a document titled Family Housing Agreement in Times New Roman. Because, of course, clauses, timelines, obligations. My eyes snagged on the lines that mattered. Owner agrees to allow Noah and Jenna to occupy the property for a minimum of 36 months. Owner agrees to contribute no less than 50% of renovation costs. Owner agrees to secure comparable housing for the duration, comparable housing. I pictured the studio near my office with the parking lot that floods when it rains. I pictured living out of plastic drawers because I gave my dresser to family. I pictured paying rent somewhere else with the same money that used to make my mortgage manageable. My fingers felt cold. The fellowship hall was warm. How do both happen at once? I looked up. This isn't legal, I said. It doesn't have to be, Dad answered. It's a family agreement. Which means, Aunt Linda added, it's stronger. That's the sentence that made my throat itch stronger. Because it would cost me more to break emotionally. Because if I said no, I wasn't refusing a contract. I was refusing them. May I? Uncle Ray asked, leaning forward like an arbitrator. Rachel, you're doing well. They're struggling. We help the struggling. It's who we are. Who we are. The 4 ugliest words when they're used to turn your yes into currency. Pattern interrupt. Zoom with me into the document, into the line where minimum of 36 months sits next to option to extend. Into the line where contribute no less than 50% has no cap. Into the white space where rent should be and isn't. Into the blank where security deposit should live. Into the absence that proves the plan. Generosity as a substitute for math. I slid the paper back. I'm not signing that, I said. Mom's smile trembled. You haven't heard all the terms. I've heard enough to know the ones that matter aren't here. Jenna lifted her chin. We've already given notice, she said again, like a reveal she was proud of. Our landlord found someone. The timing is perfect. For who? I asked. For everyone, she said, not blinking. Say the words, I said, not sure who I was talking to anymore. Say who benefits, say who pays. Rachel, Dad warned, the old warning that used to float above a wooden spoon. Be respectful. Respect has a cost. Did you know? It's counted in swallowed words and signed papers and rooms you give up to keep the peace. And peace that asks for rooms is just quiet while the taking continues. Noah leaned forward. I can pick up extra shifts, he offered. A promise he's rolled across the table so many times it's lost its shine. We'll make it right. What does right look like? I asked. Show me on paper. We don't need to nickel and dime this, Aunt Linda said with a little laugh. Family doesn't keep tally. Family does when the bank does. Family should when the mortgage does. Family must when the numbers refuse to be charmed. Jenna tapped the next slide. Photos. The twins on a playground, hair flying, cheeks flushed. She was better at this than I gave her credit for. They need stability, she said softly. Routine, a backyard, quiet. You can give them that. You can be the hero. You ever been offered the role of hero and felt the cape tighten like a noose? I did then, because the path to that applause ran straight through my front door. Dad slid another page across to me. Just put your initials, he said, like we were consenting to a procedure we'd decided on in the car. We'll work out the rest. I took a breath that didn't feel like it belonged to me and counted in my head. Don't cry. Don't yell. Don't fold. Don't freeze. Pick one verb. Live it. I won't, I said, and the word felt like a floor that finally held. I'm not giving you my home. I'm not financing your renovation. I'm not agreeing to 36 months or 3 weeks. I'm not moving out of the life I built. Mom blinked fast, tears hanging like glass. Shawa, how did we raise a daughter who cares more about a house than her brother's children? I swallowed the old reflex, the one that wants to prove I'm soft enough to deserve love. You raised a daughter who pays for what she uses, I said. And who expects the same from grown adults? The room did that trick rooms do when truth lands. It went a little blurry and then a little sharp. Noah rubbed his forehead. So that's it? That's it. Jenna gathered her pages like chips after a bad hand. We'll remember this, she said, not quite under her breath. I hope you do, I answered. Remember that I drew a boundary and stayed kind while I did it. Kind? She scoffed. You're evicting your family. From a place they don't live, I said. That's not eviction, that's reality. Dad stood like a gavel. Enough. He pressed his palms to the table. We won't turn this into a scene in God's house. Then stop staging it like theater, I said quietly. I came to talk, you came to sign. He exhaled long. We're done here. But we weren't. Not really. Because when you hold your line, the conversation ends on the surface and keeps going under the floorboards, louder in the spaces nobody sees, I stood. My chair legs scraped the carpet with a sound that felt like tearing. I picked up my bag. I looked at my mother's hands, small, neat, the nails trimmed square. I wanted to take them in mine, to say I'm not abandoning you, I'm not a stranger, I'm yours. I'm just not yours to direct. Rachel, Mom said, soft and breaking, and I almost turned to catch the piece before it hit the ground. But I didn't. I kept my shoulders level. I kept my steps even. I kept my eyes on the door. At the threshold, I stopped. I didn't plan to speak again. But sometimes the last line writes itself. I turned back, not dramatic, just steady. If generosity is the only measure, I said, then measure me by what I've already given and what I'm still offering. I will help you search. I will co-sign advice, not debt. I will babysit, budget, brainstorm. But my home is not a group project. My mortgage is not a moral failing. And my no is not cruelty. It's the only way this stays love. No one moved. Even the fluorescent buzz seemed to pause. And because I promised myself I would not let other people write my ending for me, I nodded once and walked out into the late afternoon heat. The air outside was thick as the inside of a dryer. Cars idled. A lawn crew chewed the edge of the church property down to a clean line. I got in my car and put my forehead on the steering wheel and counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3, until the shaking passed. You're still with me? Then answer me honestly. Faced with signatures waiting and faces watching and scripture tacked to the end of a request like a ribbon, would you have signed? Or would you have walked out too? Tell me. Someone out there needs to hear what held you up when the room leaned. The morning after the church meeting, I woke up before my alarm like my body didn't trust sleep anymore. The sun over Austin was the same gold it always is at 8 a.m., but it felt brighter, like the day was trying too hard to be cheerful. I made coffee I didn't finish. I stood by the window with the mug pressed to my jaw because the heat steadied me. You know that small ritual you do when you need courage but don't want to call it that? That was the mug. I started with the locks. New deadbolts, new keys, new door handle that doesn't stick in summer. It wasn't drama. It was maintenance. Still, my hands shook when I unscrewed the old plate. The metal was warm from the sun, smooth at the edges where I'd polished the hardware last spring. I held it for a second longer than necessary, the way you hold a thing that used to feel safe, then set it in the donation box with the other used-to-bes. The locksmith came, but I did most of it myself, not to prove anything, to remind myself of what I can do with 2 hands and a plan. When the latch slid cleanly and the bolt thunked into place, something in my chest answered back, click, solid, present tense. I texted the outgoing tenant about the final walkthrough. She'd already patched nail holes and scrubbed the oven until it looked like a showroom. We walked through each room with a notepad and the kind of kindness you earn from paying on time. You've been a great landlord, she said at the door, and that sentence landed like a benediction. You didn't hear it, but the house did. It softened. It stood a little taller. In the quiet after, I measured the rooms like a realtor with free time, not for any plan. Just to remind myself of the math. 11 feet by 12, 9 by 10. A hallway that can hold a bookshelf if I find one narrow enough. A living room that smiles when the afternoon light hits the east wall. I took photos I didn't post. I sent one to my friend Maya instead, the empty unit, the clean floors, a caption, "Round 2 begins." She sent back a string of confetti and then, because she knows me, "Proud of you. Who's the next tenant?" That part moved fast. I listed the unit with new photos and a price that was fair, not low, not wishful, fair. Within hours, the pings started. I filtered without guilt. No vague messages. No, can you hold it for a month while I decide? I asked for verifiable income, references that pick up the phone, proof that your last landlord will say your name without flinching. That's not mean. That's adult. The couple I chose showed up 5 minutes early, which says a lot. She teaches chemistry at the community college. He's a paramedic who looks tired in a way that means he works. They took off their shoes without being asked and noticed the baseboards, which almost no one does. When she stepped into the kitchen, she touched the edge of the counter and smiled. "It feels cared for," she said. We sat at the dining nook with the application and talked like humans. I asked about jobs, schedules, pets, the kind of noise their life makes. No judgment, just a picture. He said, "We want something steady." And I believed him because he said it without a sales pitch. They didn't haggle. They didn't ask for new everything. They asked questions you ask when you plan to stay. How's the water pressure? Is street parking safe on weekends? Who do you use for internet? The ordinary, blessed questions that say, we intend to fit our life into this place without asking it to become someone else. I ran their background checks clean. I called their last landlord. 2 rings, then a voice that did not hesitate. They paid on time. They fixed what they broke. I was sad to see them go. That sentence is landlord music. If you've been on either side of a rental agreement, you know. We signed the lease 2 days later. I slid the papers across the table, and the pen looked heavier than it is. He signed with a neat, slow hand. She dotted the I in her name like it mattered. We stood by the door, and I gave them keys that were still warm from the machine. Keys are tiny spells. You hand them over and say, "I trust you with my quiet." When they left, I leaned against the door and listened to the echo of their footsteps down the stairs. The building hummed its familiar sounds, pipes settling, distant AC units coughing into the heat, a neighbor's laugh breaking in the hallway and then disappearing. The calm surprised me. Not a victory lap, not a banner, just breath, not held, not hurried. Breath. Finally. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing the small things that make a place honest, recaulking the tub where the seal had thinned, replacing the cracked outlet cover behind the couch no one notices until they do, tightening the hinge on the hall closet that squeaks when humidity changes. I labeled the breaker box with a new strip of tape and a Sharpie, neat block letters, kitchen, bath, bedroom A, bedroom B. It looked like order. It looked like a person showing up for herself. I brought over a welcome basket because I like that kind of corny. Paper towels, a plunger, the gift no one wants to need, a candle that smells like fig and rain, 2 metro bus passes, a list of neighborhood things only locals know, the farmer's market hours, the coffee shop that opens at 6 even on Sundays, the park that stays quiet at sunset. I wrote a note. Welcome home. Please call if anything hums or hisses or feels off. I am here, not hovering, here. When I locked up, I locked without guilt. If you've ever drawn a boundary and then treated it like a borrowed line, you'll understand why that sentence matters. I didn't make my no sound nicer by undoing it with yeses that cut my knees. I said no. I did the work that followed. I paid my mortgage online with the weird little thrill that comes from numbers that still add up. That evening, I sat on my own couch with real food, not stress snacks. I ate a bowl of pasta with too much garlic and watched the sun fall into the trees across the street in that slow, orange way Texas does. The ceiling fan ticked a little. I made a mental note to check the screws on Saturday. The house exhaled. So did I. You know that long, low breath that empties the room of yesterday? That one? My phone vibrated once on the coffee table. Maya, how do you feel? I stared at the question because sometimes the answer is a shape, not a word. I typed, steady. Then, relief, but not the decorative kind, the practical kind that pays a bill. She sent back a heart and then, proud of you again, sleep. Before bed, I walked the perimeter like people do in movies when they've just inherited a castle and are checking for ghosts. No ghosts. Just the faint smell of paint from the unit downstairs and the clean, sharp scent of new metal in the door. I closed each window, clicked each lock, and let the routine become a lullaby. The air was cool enough that I didn't need the AC blasting. I left the fan on low and slid between sheets that felt like they belonged to me. I didn't dream. Or if I did, I woke up before the images could seed themselves into meaning. The morning was quiet again. The sun was kind. I made coffee and drank it all. I read the news without reading comments. I watered the plants that leaned toward the kitchen window like thirsty friends. I wrote a to-do list, email insurance about the policy renewal, order salt for the water softener, schedule the annual pest control. Simple, prosaic verbs, my favorite kind. And if this were a fairy tale with good manners, that would be the end of the chapter. Locks changed, lease signed, house secured, lesson learned, curtain. But real life isn't manners. It's motion. It doesn't pause just because you need a rest. I wish I could tell you that the calm held. I wish I could hand you an ending right here and say, see, boundaries work and everybody claps. But endings don't arrive on command. Sometimes they hide behind ordinary days, waiting for you to relax. Sometimes they knock with a sound you don't recognize until it's inside. For now, I'll leave you with this, because maybe you need to hear it as much as I needed to live it. You are allowed to enjoy your wins, even the small ones. You are allowed to sit in your quiet and call it peace without apologizing. If you've ever fought to keep something that keeps you, home, sanity, a plan, tell me how you marked the moment you didn't give it away. I want to know. Someone else watching wants to know too. And me? I turned off the lights. I checked the locks once more. I let the door click behind me like the period at the end of a sentence I finally wrote right. The first month with the new tenant started like a soft promise. Quiet stairs, shoes lined neatly by the door. A polite text on a Saturday morning. The hot water takes a minute. Normal? I answered yes, because the lines are old and honest. They'd signed on time. They smiled the way people smile when they're relieved to land. I breathed easier. You would have too. Then the second rent came due, and the soft promise hardened into static. Not late, not exactly, just drifting. Hey, Rachel, so sorry. Payroll glitch. Can we drop it Thursday instead of Monday? I said, okay, adults extend grace. Thursday came with another message. So close, by end of day. End of day meant Friday. Friday meant Monday again. Have you noticed how days slide like that when someone else is pushing the calendar? I scribbled a note on the fridge. Check ledger, call bank, don't spiral. The noise started small. A thud at midnight that could have been a dropped book. A voice in the hallway pitched too high, then shushed. A door closing with that careful extra push you give when you know a place isn't yours yet. I told myself not to become the landlord who counts footsteps. Let them live, I said. Focus on what matters: money, care, respect. Still, I started sleeping lighter, ears tuned for off. A neighbor from the end unit, Mrs. Alvarez, knocked one evening with a Tupperware of tamales and a story she didn't want to be telling. It's probably nothing, she said, which is the preamble to something. But a woman came by earlier, pretty, dark hair, big sunglasses. She walked like she owned the hallway, you know? She smiled to make it a joke. She went straight to your tenants, didn't knock. Used a code? The door clicked and she was in. Maybe a sister? I offered. Maybe a friend. Maybe we let people be people. Mrs. Alvarez tilted her head. Maybe. She wore a blazer, she added, and the room tipped a degree. Like a realtor. My mouth went dry. A blazer, navy. I could see it like a ghost overlaying the hallway, crisp lapel cutting through the familiar air. Don't go there, I told myself. Don't turn every jacket into a verdict. I thanked her for the tamales and for the watchfulness, then sat on my couch with the lid warm in my lap, like proof that the building is kinder than you think. I ate one with my fingers, standing at the sink. It was perfect and spicy and gone too fast. Rent still hadn't landed by Monday noon. I sent the polite email I promised I'd send if it did not. Per lease, rent is due the 1st and considered late after the 3rd. There is a late fee of... I typed the number like it was an apology. I hit send. I put my phone face down on the counter and dried my hands on a towel that had known better days. The reply came quick. Understood. Transferring now. Sorry for the hiccup. No anger, no excuse this time. Just a digital shrug you can't argue with. The money posted the next morning. The late fee did not. I added it to the ledger and wrote a yellow sticky note. Bring up in person. Light tone. 2 nights later, a crash shook the ceiling. It sounded like a chair hitting tile, then a curse that wasn't in English. I went downstairs in my socks. The hallway smelled like bleach and a brand of cologne I associate with club bathrooms and bad decisions. The door was cracked an inch, light pooling into the hall. I knocked. A pause. The door opened wider by the width of a breath. He stood there shirtless, the skin of his chest pale with a line where a necklace usually sits. He smiled with only his mouth. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Totally. Sorry about the noise. Dropped." He looked around, grabbed an excuse from the air. "A pot." "It sounded heavier than a pot," I said, because we both deserved a real conversation. He laughed. "Cast iron." I looked past him. Boxes still half unpacked. A pile of shoes by the mat. The kitchen light was too bright, like a stage. The chemistry teacher wasn't in sight. "Let me know if you need help mounting shelves," I said, softening the edge. "It's easier with 2. "Appreciate it," he said, and closed the door like a curtain. The next morning, a package sat on the stoop with my name on it, a slip from the carrier that said they'd missed me. I hadn't ordered anything. The scribble looked like a signature, but not mine. I held the box and felt the weight, a heavy, flat rectangle. Inside, a glossy binder from a local contractor, the kind that smells like printing ink and ambition. A business card paper clipped to the front. I flipped it open. Sample budgets. Kitchen gut with mid-grade finishes, $28,700. Wall removal with permit, $4,200. Deadline, can begin next week. A sticky note on the inside cover, per J. These align with your needs. Per J. My stomach did that tight twist it does right before you say a thing you can't unsay, per J. I stared at the card. The last name wasn't Jenna's. It was the company's marketing manager, probably. It meant nothing and everything. I set the binder down like it could burn the table. Pattern interrupt, you could call it, the moment when the music drops and the room tilts. I walked the binder back to the mailbox with a note. Delivered to wrong address. I took a photo of the label for my records, and for some thin comfort I couldn't name. All day at work, the picture sat in my head, sharp and petty. I couldn't concentrate. My code read like a language I'd met once at a party. I drank coffee like it owed me courage. When I got home, I heard voices through the floor vents. Not loud, not heated. Just the steady cadence of a plan. I don't normally listen. I don't want to be the person who does. But do you know the difference between eavesdropping and hearing something that demands to be heard? The words slipped up like steam. "She'll cave if we make it hard enough," a woman said, calm. Not the chemistry teacher. That voice wears polish like jewelry. No drama, just inconvenience. People like that hate mess. I froze by the bookcase, the grain under my palm gone from smooth to rough in a breath. People like that. Who is that? The rest of the sentence climbed the vent in a whisper I almost missed. "You're doing great," the voice went on. "End of the month she'll beg to be done." The next day, the chemistry teacher texted me for the first time without emojis. "We need to talk." We met in the stairwell at lunch like we were cheating on our own lives. She looked tired in a way that made me want to hand her my bed and stand guard while she slept. "I'm sorry about the rent," she said. "It's not like us." She swallowed. "This move, it wasn't my idea. I didn't push, I didn't pry, I just waited. Silence is sometimes the only question you need. He has a friend, she said finally, eyes on the step. She said she could help. She keeps saying we're almost there, but we're not. And people keep showing up, contractors. A stager? I don't know. She rubbed her forehead. I told him I don't like it. He said not to worry, quote. What friend? I asked, careful as cutting a wire. She shook her head. Someone from his sister-in-law's side. Name starts with J. Jenna. June. He calls her J. She winced like she'd dropped a plate. I heard the name like a door unlock in a house I didn't know I owned. The air went thin. If anyone enters without permission again, I said, you call me, immediately. She nodded, big and quick, like a student promising to study for a test that measures something bigger than grades. That night, I set my phone to record because Texas is a one-party state, because I am the party, because I needed a way to hold on to sound without letting it ruin me. I'm not telling you this to start a debate about ethics. I'm telling you because sometimes the only way to carry truth is to put it somewhere outside your body. I caught the call by accident. I was home early, dishes in the sink, a saucepan steaming the last of the rosemary from my windowsill. A voice floated up through the vent again, clearer this time, cheerful as a radio host. Okay, she said, here's what you do. A pause. Paper rustling. Stop answering her messages until she panics. Turn the music up on weeknights, just enough to rattle the neighbor, not enough to get cops called. When she reaches out, be sweet, delay. Always be sweet when you delay. Jenna, he said. And there it was. Not Jay, not a ghost. A full name spoken like a password. I told you, she answered, pleased. I'm good at this. My hand shook so hard I had to set the phone down on the counter like a fragile thing. The recording kept catching the hum of my refrigerator and the thud in my chest that felt audible. Jenna's voice curled through the vent like perfume you recognize on a stranger in the checkout line. By the time your lease is a headache, she said, she'll sell. That's what people like Rachel do. They think they're tough until it costs them sleep. I leaned my forehead against the cool cabinet door and stared at the knot in the wood while she listed instructions like recipes. I have a party on a Sunday afternoon, she said. Church people hate noise on a Sunday. Park in her spot by accident, oops. Oh, and tell the contractor we're not ready yet. He'll circle back with a better deal. Do you know the feeling when a puzzle clicks and you realize the picture is uglier than you hoped? I stood there and listened to a plan that had never been about home. It was about pressure, patience. The kind of theft that asks you to hold the door open because you don't want to be rude. When the call ended, I stopped the recording with fingers that didn't feel like mine. I replayed it once to make sure I hadn't hallucinated the part where she said my name. She had, twice. Clear, crisp. I saved the file. I emailed it to myself. I emailed it to Maya with no message, and then called to tell her not to listen yet. You ever do that? Send a thing out into the world because keeping it only in your head makes you feel like you could be crazy? I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the lease. The line about quiet enjoyment glowed like it had been bolded by a hand I couldn't see. Quiet enjoyment. Such a gentle phrase for such a basic right. I looked at the late fee still unpaid. I looked at the date circled on my calendar for their second-month inspection. You build a life with tiny lines of ink, and then one voice through a vent tries to erase them. I won't tell you the next part yet, not the call I made, not the storm I chose. That belongs to another scene, another breath. For now, I'll ask you what I asked myself with my thumb on the play button. When you have proof that the mess in your life is not a coincidence but a plan, what do you do first? Do you confront? Do you document? Do you wait? Tell me. Someone listening needs your map. Because the ghost wasn't a ghost anymore. She had a name. She had a strategy. and she was in my house, not with keys, but with instructions. The midpoint of this story wasn't a bang. It was a script whispered through a grate. And once you hear your name in a script you didn't write, you either step into the part they picked for you, or you choose a new scene. Here's what I learned about fear. It doesn't always sprint. Sometimes it walks beside you, keeps pace, makes small talk while it steals your air. I woke up the morning after that vent call with Jenna and moved like a person underwater. Coffee, shower, shoes. Phone in pocket with the recording sitting there like a live wire. If you'd been in my kitchen, you'd have told me to breathe. I did. I counted to 4 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale and felt exactly nothing change until I decided something would. I started with a list, not a rage list, a plan. 1. Preserve evidence. 2. Get counsel. 3. Set a boundary with teeth. 4. Don't do it alone. I forwarded the audio to a fresh email, labeled it with the date and time, stored it in 2 places, then printed a basic transcript. Hearing your name in someone else's strategy is one kind of shock. Seeing it in 12-point font is another. I called Maya. I need you here at 6, I said. If I waver, remind me who I am. She said, I'm bringing tacos and my courtroom voice. On my lunch break, I stepped into the kind of strip mall law office that smells like toner and Resolve. The attorney was young enough to still love explaining things. He listened to the recording with his eyebrows knitting slowly, then nodded. Texas is one-party consent, he said. You're fine to have this. You're also fine to enforce your lease. Document everything. Put all requests in writing. If the pattern continues, you can issue a cure or quit notice. He slid a template across the desk. Use this language. Stay factual. No adjectives. No adjectives. I can do that. Facts are the ground truth of feelings. By late afternoon, the sky over Austin had turned the color of a bruise, storm rolling in from nowhere like storms do here. Good, let it thunder. Let the weather match the room. I texted my tenants. I need to meet today at 7 p.m. In your unit to discuss lease compliance, please confirm. No apologies. No please with a question mark that begs. Just the clean line of an expectation. Confirmed. The chemistry teacher replied in under a minute. 10 minutes later, we'll be here. Then a third text I did not expect. Is Jenna invited? So the name had a place in her phone too. The surge of heat in my chest felt like truth breaking the surface. She doesn't live here, I wrote. This is between landlord and tenants. No adjectives, I called Noah. He answered on the second ring, voice cautious the way you sound when you don't know if the call is a bomb. I need you present at 7, I said. Your wife is involved. You should hear how Rachel... At 7, I repeated. Bring your listening face. He sighed and said yes the way a person agrees to a root canal. Maya arrived at 6 with tacos, as promised, and a notepad thick enough to scare lies into behaving. She hugged me, quick and fierce. You okay? She asked. The question did that terrible kind thing. It opened a small door in my chest. I closed it gently. Ask me at 8, I said. I'll know by then. At 6:55, thunder stitched a ragged line across the sky. The hallway smelled like wet concrete and someone's laundry detergent bragging about mountain rain. We stood outside the downstairs door while I knocked and reminded myself of the rules. Stay calm, stay clear, stay documented. The chemistry teacher opened first. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun that said the day had been long. He stood behind her with a look I recognized. Defensive hope. Noah arrived last, damp around the collar, eyes sliding everywhere but mine. No Jenna, of course. Let's sit, I said, and the word felt like a gavel. We took the table, me and Maya on one side, the tenants on the other, Noah awkwardly perched on a chair by the counter like a guilty observer. The apartment looked lived in that weak three-way, half settled, half hopeful. A plant reached for the window. A stack of mail flared at the corner like a fan. On the counter, a binder I recognized from a contractor's marketing department lay face down, a business card peeking like a tongue. "I'm going to be direct," I began. "There are 3 issues: late rent, unauthorized entries, and behavior inconsistent with quiet enjoyment." "No adjectives," I reminded myself. "I will read the relevant lease clauses, then we'll discuss solutions," I read. The words carried the clean strength of lines drawn long before this night. When I finished, the apartment felt smaller, like the sentences had put up walls where vague air used to be. He cleared his throat. "Look, we're trying," he said. "I believe you're trying," I said. "Trying doesn't suspend terms." She jumped in, voice low. "I'm sorry about the entries," she said. "I didn't give anyone the code, he did." Her eyes flicked to the side. He stared at the tabletop. "And the late payment," she added. "That won't happen again." "It can't," I said, not unkind. "You know that." Noah shifted, leaned forward like he wanted to help and didn't know how. I turned so he had to meet my eyes. "Before we go further," I said, "you should hear something." I set my phone on the table and pressed play. Jenna's voice filled the room like perfume spilled on tile. Sweet, unavoidable, impossible to mop. "Stop answering her messages until she panics. Turn the music up on weeknights. Always be sweet when you delay. By the time your lease is a headache, she'll sell." The words crept into the corners and sat there. The chemistry teacher's hand flew to her mouth. He closed his eyes and swore softly. Not at me. Noah went gray. That can't." He stopped because it can. He recognized his wife's cadence the way you recognize your own name in a crowd. He didn't look at me. He stared at the contractor's binder as if it might explain itself. I hit pause. The room hummed with the storm and the refrigerator and the way shame sings in your teeth. "This is what I'm navigating," I said. "Not mistakes, a plan." He started to speak. I held up my hand. "I'm not here to argue about whether she meant it," I said. "I'm here to state terms." I slid 2 papers across the table. One a notice to cure or quit with dates circled. The other a written reminder of the access policy and the consequences for breaches. "This is not war, it's enforcement. You will pay on time. You will not allow anyone into this unit without my permission. You will abide by quiet hours. Break these again, and I will move to terminate the lease. This is not personal. It's the job." He bristled. "So we're criminals now." "No," I said. "You're tenants. I'm a landlord. We have roles. Let's play the ones we signed." The chemistry teacher reached for a pen with a shaky hand. "We'll sign," she said. She wrote her name like someone carving a promise into wood. He hesitated, then signed too. Noah rubbed his face. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know she—" He stopped because he had known something. Maybe not the script, maybe not the instructions, but he'd known the music. He'd let it play. "You will tell her to stand down," I said. "You will tell her to stop contacting my tenants. You will tell her to stay away from this building." My voice surprised me with its calm. "And you will not deliver any more messages on her behalf." He nodded, small and ashamed. "I will." I turned to the chemistry teacher. "If anyone enters again without my permission, call me. If noise continues past hours, document it. If you feel pressured to act against the lease, tell me. I will not punish you for someone else's plan. But I can't protect you from what I don't know." She exhaled like a weight had slid from her shoulders to the floor. "Thank you," she said, and it wasn't gratitude so much as relief. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I messed up," he said. "No excuses, just the flat plank of the sentence. I'll fix it." Maya broke her well-timed silence. "Fixing starts with now," she said. not with promises about tomorrow. The storm cracked overhead. The lights flickered. Somewhere outside, a car alarm answered the thunder. The sound sharpened everyone. We moved to logistics. Late fee paid by morning. Access code changed tonight. A courtesy notice system for future maintenance visits. A direct line to me, not to Jay. When the papers were signed and the rules were respoken, I stood. The chair legs grated softly against the floor. "I'm going to ask a question," I said, and I was speaking to you now as well as to the room. If you were in my place, if the house you worked a decade for was being tested by a strategy whispered through a vent, would you stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you stand up and risk being called unkind? Answer me, even if it's just in your head. Your answer is a mirror, he swallowed. "I'd stand up," he said, barely audible. "Good," I said, "because I already did." Noah looked like a man who'd wandered into the wrong movie and finally recognized the plot. "I'll talk to her tonight," he said. "I'll make it stop." He meant it the way a person means something when the evidence is louder than their love for the person who made it. "Make it stop by changing behavior," Maya said crisp, "not by asking Rachel to be smaller." He grimaced, nodded again, and left without meeting my eyes. The chemistry teacher walked us to the door. "If we start to mess up," she said, "tell us, don't guess, don't wait, just tell us, I believed her." In the hallway, I let my shoulders drop 1 inch, not more. Victory in moments like this is not a parade. It's a hinge that swings the right way. Maya squeezed my arm. "You were a scalpel," she said. "Not a hammer." We climbed the stairs. At my door, I turned the new lock and listened to the bolt seat itself with that satisfying thunk. The apartment smelled like whatever the storm does to old wood and a life that's been lived in. I leaned my back against the door and let the adrenaline ebb. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "We heard there was trouble tonight. Please don't escalate." A second later from Dad. "We can discuss as a family. Family. The word can be a bandage or a leash." I typed back with my new rule. No adjectives, only facts. I enforced my lease. I have evidence Jenna interfered. I will send it to you if you want the full context. 3 dots, then nothing. Silence from their side felt like a thin mercy. Maya opened the taco bag and handed me a foil-wrapped lifeline. "Eat," she ordered. We ate standing up like teenagers after curfew. My hands shook less. The room stopped tilting. I sat at my table and wrote the follow-up email the lawyer had suggested. Bullet points, timestamps, attachments. I sent it to the tenants, CC'd myself, BBC'd a folder labeled "If I Doubt." I set a reminder for the morning to confirm the late fee and the code change. I saved the recording one more time because anxiety likes redundancy. When the work was done, the anger came, not hot, but clean. It surprised me with its clarity. Anger like a blade that cuts the rope you've been dragging that isn't yours. I stood at the window and watched the storm stitch itself unwound. Rain made the streetlights fuzzy. A stray cat sprinted under a car, shook itself, kept going. I liked that cat. You might be thinking, "Rachel, wasn't there an easier way? Couldn't you have played nice? Waited it out? Hoped they got bored?" Maybe. Maybe you've survived with softer tools and it worked. But some battles ask for a spine that doesn't fold just because the room frowns. Some stories demand a climax that tells the truth out loud, even when truth cracks something you thought you needed. So I'll ask you one more time, because this is where the story asks for you. Will you stay silent, or will you stand up? Will you let someone else define generous as you disappearing, or will you draw a line a person can see from space? Drop your answer. Somebody reading needs the courage of your sentence. I turned from the window and did the smallest brave thing a person can do. I washed the 2 taco plates. I put them away. I made a list for morning. I set my phone on Do Not Disturb and laid it face down on the table like a truce with myself. The house settled around me. The fan hummed. The new lock gleamed a little when the lightning flashed, then went quiet again. The worst of the storm had passed. Not the consequences, not the fallout, but the moment when you choose your voice over their plan that had landed clean as thunder. 2 mornings after the storm meeting, the air felt newly washed. Streets still glittered with leftover rain, the kind that turns every pothole into a small sky. I brewed coffee and reread the email thread, bullet points, timestamps, attachments, like a pilot checking instruments before takeoff. The late fee had landed at 8:01 a.m. The access code had been changed by 9:14, confirmed with a screenshot. On paper, the world was behaving. In my chest, a question kept knocking. Is behaving the same as safe? At noon, the chemistry teacher texted, "Can we talk in person tonight? 6 p.m.? I said yes. I spent the rest of the day working the way you work, when part of your brain is saving battery for later. At 5:30, the sun came back strong, heat lifting from the asphalt like a rumor. I walked downstairs with the steadiness you get when you're tired of wobbling. They were waiting at the table, a manila envelope between them. She had that look some decisions give you, worn out and crystal clear at the same time. He looked smaller than he had a week ago, like the story had let some air out of him. She spoke first. "We're not going to be the people who make your home a fight," she said. "We found a place closer to campus, month to month. It's not perfect, but it's peaceful." She slid the envelope across. Inside, a written notice to terminate under the cure or quit option, signed by both. Relief is a physical thing. It has a weight. It moves. I felt it drop from my shoulders to the floor like a sack of wet laundry, then evaporate into the room. I read their letter slowly, let the shape of the words say what they needed to say. "Thank you for telling me directly," I said. "We'll do this clean." He cleared his throat. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the noise, for the delay, for letting someone direct us." He didn't say Jenna's name. He didn't have to. "We're paying the rest of the month and the full late fee. We'll leave it better than we found it." "You already started," I said, meaning the honesty, meaning the signature, meaning the courage to choose peace without burning every bridge on the way out. We set a move-out date, a walk-through time, a list, fill nail holes, wipe baseboards, replace the cracked plate on the bathroom outlet. Adult chores, not punishments. Before I left, the chemistry teacher touched my sleeve. "Thank you for not making me the enemy," she said. That sentence hummed afterward, like the apartment itself breathed easier having heard it. I went upstairs and wrote what the lawyer would have wanted. A mutual termination agreement acknowledging their notice, my acceptance, the financials. I kept the language factual and also human. When I hit send, silence fell the way it does when paperwork is done. Quiet, official, oddly kind. Then came the part I'd avoided, the call that felt like peeling a bandage off skin that hadn't healed. I texted the family chat. "I have evidence Jenna interfered with my lease. We will meet Saturday, 4 p.m., at my place. No ambushes, no guests." The dots bubbled, disappeared, bubbled again. Dad typed, "Fine." Mom sent a prayer hands emoji and "Let's keep this loving." Noah wrote privately, "I'll be there, I'm sorry." Saturday arrived bright and ruthless. The sky was postcard blue. I baked something on purpose. Brownies. The kind that makes a house smell like safe weekends from years you wish you could fold and put in your pocket. If this meeting was going to rupture something, I wanted the air to at least be sweet. They came on time. Dad held his jaw like an argument. Mom carried a Tupperware of salad as if hospitality could cancel evidence. Noah walked in last, shoulder to the door frame, as if he needed a structure to hold him up. Jenna did not come. My invitation had not included her. That was intentional, not petty. Some rooms are not owed to you. We sat at my dining table, the one that fits 4 if you squeeze. I opened my laptop, not to hide behind it, but to make the witness visible. "I'm going to play something," I said. You will listen, then we will talk. I pressed play. Jenna's voice poured into my home like perfume I hadn't chosen. The words were the same as before. Don't answer. Turn the music up. Be sweet when you delay. By the time her lease is a headache, she'll sell. In this room, with family faces catching each syllable, the sentences sounded both smaller and more awful. Smaller, because I wasn't scared of them anymore. More awful, because we all recognized the tone used to justify a plan that wears righteousness like a mask. Mom covered her mouth. Dad's eyes narrowed at the mention of, "She'll sell." Noah stared at the table until the wood grain could have been a map. When it ended, I didn't fill the space. "Silence can be a teacher," Dad spoke first. "That's unacceptable," he said carefully, as if the word might crack if he pressed too hard. Mom's voice came out thin. She thought she was helping. She tried and stopped because the sentence couldn't stand. "No," she corrected herself quietly. She thought she was right. Noah's eyes were wet. He didn't blink like a man trying to hide it. He let the water stand. "I knew she was pushing," he said. "I didn't know it was a script." He looked at me then. "I'm sorry I dragged you into a show you didn't audition for." I closed the laptop. "Here are my terms," I said, because grief without structure just spills. You will not ask me to house you. You will not ask me to finance your renovations. You will not ask me to move out of my life. If you need help finding options within your budget, I will help. If you need a babysitter for an interview, I will help. If you want a budget template, I'll build it. If you show up with Pinterest boards, I will close the door. Mom winced at that last line and then nodded, like she was learning a new choreography and her feet hurt, but she'd keep moving. Dad cleared his throat. "We were wrong to call you selfish," he said. "We confused generosity with surrender." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from him. I took it. I didn't ask it to be prettier. Noah wiped his face with the heel of his hand. "I'm talking to Jenna," he said. "Not a fight, a line. She can be mad. She can be anything. But she can't do this again." He inhaled, exhaled. "If she pushes, I'll rent something we can afford. By myself, if I have to." Mom reached for his forearm. He let her. I stood, not to retreat, but to mark the end. "There are brownies," I said, because sometimes you choose small kindness as an exit ramp. We ate them with paper napkins and knew quiet. When they left, Mom hugged me the old way, not the guilty way. Dad kissed my temple. Noah squeezed my shoulder and looked like a boy I used to share a table with, not a man who had tried to redraw my floor plan. The tenants moved out the following Friday. They left the place cleaner than they found it. On the kitchen counter, a note. "Thank you for giving us dignity." 2 gift cards lay under it, one for the coffee shop that opens at 6, one for the hardware store. "For the next hinge," the second card read. I laughed, a small surprise sound that felt like a window opening. I did the walk-through with my list. I clicked photos, flipped switches, ran the water until it ran clear and strong. Then I changed the locks again, not from fear, but from ritual. New keys, new chapter. The bolt thunked into place, present tense. I gave myself a weekend before listing it. I painted over the scuffs that held old arguments. I patched the spot by the thermostat I somehow always miss. I replaced the bathroom mirror with one that doesn't warp the edges of your face. If you've ever stayed in a house after a hard season, you know why mirrors matter. They tell you who you are. They can lie if you let them. On Sunday evening, I posted new photos. I wrote an honest description. Bright 2/1, quiet building, respectful neighbors, landlord who cares about boundaries and repairs. I listed the rent at a number that respects both. I turned off my phone and took myself on a walk, past oak trees that throw deep shade, past kids chalking galaxies on the sidewalk, past a couple arguing about nothing and then laughing as if they'd remembered the point wasn't to win. Applications landed Monday. This time I read them with a calm hand. I picked a nurse and a librarian, two people whose lives run on schedules and service. They moved in 2 weeks later. They brought plants and a rug that looked like a borrowed sunrise. The building exhaled again. So did I. And Jenna? She sent one text through Noah. 3 sentences and the only kind of apology I'll accept right now. I was wrong. I overstepped. It won't happen again. I didn't respond directly. I didn't spike the ball either. Some victories are best honored by filling your life with the next right thing and letting the echo fade. Here's what I want you to take with you if you've sat through this whole story. A boundary is not a wall you build to hide behind. It's a door you learn to lock and unlock with judgment you trust. It lets love knock without letting entitlement move in. It lets peace stay without asking you to shrink to keep it comfortable. If you're sitting in your own version of this, maybe not a duplex, maybe a job, a friendship, a plan, ask yourself the question that became my compass. What are you willing to keep so you can keep being you? Then draw the line that protects that answer, even if the room frowns. Especially then, now it's your turn. If you were here at this table with brownies and evidence and a heart that wants to be both kind and safe, what line would you draw? What would you say to the person who thinks generous means yours to take? Tell me in the comments. Your sentence might be the hinge someone needs for their own door. I'll close with the simplest thing I know how to say after all this. I kept my home, I kept my plan, I kept myself. And the lock clicks just the same, every night, like a small, steady yes